Welcome back. Today we continue our journey through one of the most entertaining blockbuster franchises of the early 2000s. Welcome back to part 2 of the Mummy Saga. In the last episode, we talked about how the Mummy revived the adventure genre and introduced us to Rick and Evelyn O'Connell and the terrifying curse of Imhotep, and the film struck a perfect balance between action, humor, horror, and romance and became an instant classic. But when a movie is that successful, the next question is always the same. Can the sequel live up to the hype? Because sequels have a reputation for going bigger, louder, and sometimes losing what made the original special. And in many ways, The Mummy Returns absolutely goes bigger. The stakes are clearly higher, the mythology is deeper, and the action is definitely more explosive. But it also takes some risk, and not all of them unfortunately pay off. So today we're diving into one of the most ambitious sequels of its era, a film that expanded the world of The Mummy and introduced a character who would go on to launch an entire spin-off franchise. So before we get started, I want to give a huge shout out to my Patreon producers. Thank you guys for supporting the channel and helping these videos happen. If you want even more content like spoiler reviews, movie vlogs, game reviews, and early uploads, check out the Patreon link in the description. And without further ado, let's get right into it. So right from the beginning, this movie makes it clear that it's aiming for that scale. The opening scene takes us back to ancient Egypt once again, but this time the story focuses on a new figure, a warrior known as the Scorpion King.
Anubis accepted his offer and spared his life.
And this introduction is important because it sets up the central mythology of the film. We learn that the Scorpion King was once a powerful ruler who made a deal with the god Anubis in exchange for ultimate power. And in return, he led an army that conquered cities and spread destruction across the land. But that power came at a cost. And that legend becomes the foundation for everything that this film follows. This opening immediately tells the audiences that the sequel isn't just repeating the first movie, it's expanding the universe. When we jump forward in this film to the 1930s, it's kind of a jump because we see that Rick and Evelyn are no longer just adventurers. They are married and have settled into a new life. And now they have a son named Alex. This change is one of the biggest differences between the first film and the sequel because instead of focusing solely on romance and discovery, the story now revolves around a family. And that shift really raises the stakes emotionally because now it's not just about survival, it's about protecting someone that they love. Rick once again is played brilliantly by Brendan Fraser, who brings the same charm and humor that made the original so enjoyable. He's confident, resourceful, and always ready for some danger, but now there's a new dimension to his character because he is a father. And that responsibility changes how he approaches every single situation. Meanwhile, Evelyn, this time played once again by Rachel Weisz, becomes even more central to the story. The film reveals that she has a mysterious past connected to ancient Egypt, and that connection adds a layer of destiny to her character because she's no longer just a scholar, she is part of the mythology itself. Of course, the sequel to The Mummy wouldn't be complete without the return of its iconic villain. Imhotep is resurrected once again, and this time his goal is even more ambitious. Instead of simply resurrecting his love that I couldn't pronounce in the first video, he now seeks to control the power of the Scorpion King and his army. That objective raises the stakes dramatically because if Imhotep succeeds, then the consequences won't just affect a single city. They could affect the entire world, and that sense of global danger gives the film a much larger scale than its predecessor. One of the defining characteristics of this series and of this film in particular is its pacing. This movie rarely does slow down. There's always something going on. From the moment the story begins, the characters are constantly moving, traveling across continents like Indiana Jones, escaping danger, and chasing ancient artifacts. There are train chases, temple battles, desert pursuits, and large-scale action sequences that push the limits of what the franchise had done before. The film also embraces spectacle in a big way, and while that makes it incredibly entertaining, it also means the story sometimes feels more chaotic than the original. One of the most important moments from the film is the introduction of the Scorpion King, played by Dwayne Johnson. At the time, this was a major... Jesus, why did I say it like that? At the time, this was a major turning point for this wrestler because it marked the transition of him going from a professional wrestler into a blockbuster movie star. And even though his screen time in this film is relatively brief, his presence is pretty memorable, and the character is larger than life, pretty powerful and intimidating, and visually striking. And the introduction was so successful that it did lead to this spin-off that we will be talking about in the next video, launching a brand new franchise. If the first movie felt like a classic adventure, this sequel feels like a full-scale blockbuster spectacle. Everything is bigger. The set pieces are more elaborate, the CGI is crazier, not super great. The enemies are more dangerous, the stakes are higher, and one of the most memorable sequences is the battle involving the massive army of Anubis. It's a moment that showcases the film's ambition and its willingness to push visual effects to new levels. But at the same time, like I said, some of the CGI during that final battle has not aged well. It has not. And that contrast kind of becomes noticeable when we revisit the movie today. I thought the rumors were not true. I haven't seen this movie since I was a child. They are true. But despite all the explosions, supernatural chaos, the emotional core of The Mummy is the relationship with the family and their son. Alex brings a lot of humor to this story because he is put in danger. The stakes do feel more personal. The family dynamic is what keeps this film really grounded, even when the action comes over the top. And it does remind the audience that beneath all the spectacle, this is still a story about love and loyalty. And I feel like the final act of this movie really brings everything together in a massive showdown between Imhotep, the Scorpion King, and the O'Connell family. It's loud, it's chaotic, and it's filled with a bunch of physical spectacles that, while not looking super great, delivers on a satisfying resolution to this story. The heroes all survive, the villains are all defeated, and the adventure comes to an end, at least for now. But we know there's more to come. They're making a Mummy 4, baby! There's a lot to admire about The Mummy Returns. It expands the world, it deepens the mythology, and it delivers some of the most entertaining action sequences of the early 2000s. The chemistry between the cast remains really strong, the humor still lands, and the sense of adventure is still very much alive. Unfortunately, what doesn't work and the weaknesses are that at the same time, the story can feel a little overcrowded, the pacing is a little overwhelming because of how fast it is and all these storylines. And a heavy reliance on CGI makes some of these moments not timeless, I'll put it like that. These issues don't ruin the movie, though. I feel like they have like that balance of polish and like the original film. It's just that they try to go a little too crazy. In the end, I think The Mummy Returns is exactly what you expected from a big blockbuster sequel. Bigger, louder, more ambitious, even with its flaws. I think that it remains an incredibly fun movie that captures the spirit of the adventure and delivers non-stop entertainment, and for fans of the franchise is an essential chapter in the story. Next stop on the Mummy Saga, we're stepping into something very different. You already know what it is, the spin-off, a new hero, and the origin story of a character who would become a major action star. We're talking the Scorpion King. Best be there, best like and subscribe.
Alternative means of transportation.
A double-decker bus!
It was his idea.
Was not!
Was too.
Just go!